Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. I'm Adrian Lloyd. I'm going to be kind of flying a little bit off the cuff here. I got some things that I've kind of had saved, but I haven't really laid things out. But I just had a thought on my mind that I kind of wanted to get out. So with everything that's been going on, and especially everything that's been going on over the last month and a half since the last time I really posted a video, it got me into thinking about the situation that we're in. So obviously, the big news came out of the UK where there was the race riots that took place after three little girls were stabbed and killed, and a few others ended up getting injured as well, which led to people in the UK naturally being very pissed off. And when once again nothing was being done about this situation, they started to take matters into their own hands. And we got to see the true intentions of the state. In this case, it was the UK government, but the true intentions of the state as to where we stand, where we as citizens of our own nation stand in comparison to the foreigners that are coming into our countries. It was quite clear from everything that took place in the UK that the citizens of the UK, and I mean the natural born English people, the Irish, the people who can trace their lineage to this land back for thousands of years, it's quite clear that they are the enemy to the state. They are the ones that the state is actively working against in order to replace. That they are allowing the worst actions being carried out by foreigners to go unchecked. They have basically said this explicitly, not just in this situation, but in other situations like the rape gangs that were making their way across the UK. That was big news a few years ago. Things like that. They basically made it quite clear that the foreigners are the ones that have all the special interest, and the native-born citizens of the UK are second-class citizens in their own homes. And this is very reminiscent to what we see take place across our country, across the United States, and many other European countries, is where the natives are the ones that are actively being repressed by the state, while the foreigners are able to go about and commit whatever crimes they want with unchecked. And the police in the UK were no help at all. The UK in the police, the police in the UK, Jesus, they were actively working against the British citizens that were protesting and that were rioting, that were angry about everything that took place. Because while all this was going on, there were gangs of, I think it was mostly Arab men. There were gangs of foreigners that were making their way around the city. Let me restart that. While this was going on in the city of Southport, there were gangs of foreign men that were making their way around with weapons. They were brandishing these weapons openly, and they were attacking anyone that they could get their hands on if they were white. And it didn't have to be people involved with the protests or involved with the riots. No, there were people that were just trying to go about their day, trying to run errands, trying to go to and from work, and they found themselves at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were getting assaulted. And while this was going on, the British police were more concerned with making sure that the protesters were hemmed in. While behind them, groups of foreigners shouted threats to them, to their families, about what they plan to do as soon as they take over, brandishing their weapons. But the UK police, they made sure that they put their primary focus on the people that were protesting the murder of three little girls. And why did it reach to this point? It reached this point because up to now, the government hasn't done anything to stem this problem. Over the last 10 years, the UK has seen numerous terrorist attacks, which has killed dozens, if not hundreds of people by now. They have had a huge increase in crime. There were acid attacks, there were knife attacks, there was these moped knife attacks that were happening. There were the rape gangs that were making their way around. I know the Rotherham case was a rather big one. And in that case, the police explicitly said that part of the reason they didn't pursue the rape gangs in Rotherham more was the fact that they were afraid of being called racist. So they allowed over 1,000 women and girls, because some of them were underage, to be abducted, to be pimped out, and some of them be murdered, just because they were afraid of being considered racist. Which brings me to sort of the idea that I ended up having, which is, these days, being white is original sin. And what I mean by that is that obviously original sin is that something you are born with. I'm talking about it sort of in the biblical sense. It is something that you were born with, and you have to make amends for, even if it was something that you did not do yourself. So the idea of the sins of the father affecting the child. And we've reached the point now where this is the state that we're at. Because we are being forced as a group of people to apologize for things that we never took part in. We are told to apologize for imperialism, even though many of our countries did not engage in imperialism. Many of our countries did not engage in colonization. Some people like to try and point over here about what happened with the natives as if that was some sort of colonization. But all these groups of native people, all these Aboriginal people were already doing this to each other. Many of them were nomads and didn't really have much of a claim to land itself and the idea of property. I mean, this is the whole story about Manhattan, that the Aboriginal people, they ended up selling Manhattan in the U.S. for dirt cheap because to them, they didn't think that the sale of property was possible because they didn't have the concept. It was the same thing as if the Europeans said they wanted to buy a piece of the sky. They basically thought that they were getting away with free money, and these dumb Europeans were basically spending money on something that was worthless, something that you couldn't buy. So many of these tribes were nomads. But that applies over here, where that's our fight that we got to do. But there's plenty of European countries where it's the native European countries that did not engage in imperialism, and yet they're forced to endure this at the same time. They had the same accusations that are thrown out against them. In fact, being white makes you automatically racist. Isn't that more or less what they ended up saying these days? It makes you automatically racist. And being racist is about the worst thing that you could be these days, is it not? It's the biggest accusation that people can throw out as a way to discredit someone else. It used to be being sexist and misogynist used to be the big one, but those have kind of died down more and more over recent years. They don't really have the impact that they used to have. So the big one is racist. And that is the worst thing that you could possibly be, demonstrated by what ended up taking place in the Rotherham case, in which the police would rather let murderers go, let human traffickers go, let pimps go, let abductors go, than be considered racist. That, in their mind, was worse. And that, in the mind of many people, is the worst thing that you could possibly be. And in fact, with the arrests that ended up getting made, they were clearing out their prisons of violent offenders to make room for the protesters and the rioters that they wanted to put in jail. And they were giving them harsh sentences for their quote-unquote crimes, even though many of them did not commit any crimes. Many of them were not responsible for the burning down buildings that ended up happening. Many people were not committing an act of violence. They were there to protest in the strictest terms, and yet they still are going to find themselves in a jail cell, while the people that were carrying out assaults, murders, rapes, these knife attacks or these chemical attacks, who aren't even from the UK. They're being let out to make room for these new arrivals, for these racists that have to be put in. And not only are they clearing out the prisons of violent offenders to make room for these quote-unquote racists, But in fact, I've never seen trials happen so quickly. Within days of people being arrested, they were already brought before a judge, their trial happened, they were convicted, and they were sent off to a prison cell. If you think about how clogged our justice system is, it can be months before you actually see the inside of a courtroom for your trial. But they were willing to forego all this and in order to throw people into jail and denying people bail that were arrested. Many of the judges basically said they're not going to grant bail for the people that ended up getting arrested. So even if they didn't receive a trial, they were still going to be stuck in a jail cell up until the point where they actually can go to trial. Now, this is what they're prepared to do for people who are apparently saying inappropriate and offensive things, because that is the big thing with a lot of these cases that I ended up seeing, is that it wasn't so much for their actions in the riot, but many times it had to do with things that they said or things that they ended up saying online. So it's not about them burning down an immigration building. It's not about them, flipping a car. It's about what they ended up saying. Again, being racist is original sin now, something that every white person is born with, has to spend every moment of their active life fighting against, and can be used as a club against you whenever it's convenient by everybody else. And the main argument that comes from a lot of these people is that the history of the European people is one of colonialism, of genocide, of slavery, even though these are all things that have been practiced over and over and over by every race, every religion, every creed. There is not a group of people out there who is not guilty of all these things. Slavery was a universal practice. Everybody was enslaving everybody else. Everyone was playing the game of power. That's something that has been played since the first tribes of ancient men ended up fighting another tribe of ancient men, all the way up to what we are doing to this day right now. We play the game of power. But for some reason, we're the only ones that are held to a different standard. I mean, do you think for a second that the Mongols have to deal with this? The Mongols had one of the largest empires to ever exist. They went across half the world, raping and killing and committing acts of genocide against whoever got in their way and didn't give them whatever the hell they want. They say about, I think it's supposed to be 1 in 3 Asian people are related back to Genghis Khan or his tribe, because that's how much raping they ended up doing. They have some amount of DNA in them that can be traced back to Genghis Khan. So clearly, a person that did quite awful things. He enslaved people, he murdered people, he practiced colonization. And yet, I doubt the Mongols are going to be held to that. Do you think that the Africans are going to be held to account for what Shaka Zulu did when he was going around the African countryside, just murdering any tribe that got in his way and didn't surrender to him immediately? And I don't really remember exactly where Shaka Zulu was from. It might have been South Africa, but that's why I'm saying the African countryside. I know it's a nation. I know it's a continent, not a country. I just don't remember exactly where Shaka Zulu came from. But none of these people are going to be held to account for what Shaka Zulu did. Are the Rwandans held to account for the genocide that ended up taking place 30 years ago or however long it was? Are they going to be held to account for the 1 million people that were murdered during the Rwandan genocide? And that's within my lifetime. So it's quite clear that it's used as a club against us specifically. And that's because it's original sin that we are forced to deal with. In fact, it is so bad that you are viewed worse than pedophiles. And I'm not kidding when I say that. This was something that popped up to me when I was looking into the things with the UK riot. It's a thread that ended up getting put out by this account. It's at Slatsum. And it says, almost every single judge I've identified as being involved in the rapid prosecution and incarceration of individuals who participated in the Southport riots have a history of letting convicted pedophiles walk free with no jail time. We'll just go through a few, but they all basically follow the same path. Judge Andrew Mineri sentenced William Nelson Morgan 69 to 32 months in prison for refusing to move out of the way of police officers. Mineri previously let a pedophile who collected baby rape videos walk with no jail time because his lawyer said he had good character. John Temperley sentenced Bill Thompson 31 to 12 weeks in prison for emojis which incited racial hatred. Not really sure how that's even possible, but the guy's in prison for 12 weeks. Temperley previously let a pedophile who had been stashing child abuse images walk free because he had displayed remorse. Francis Laird sentenced Charlie Bullock, 21, to 18 months in prison for throwing rocks at a line of police. Last week, Laird let a pervert who had collected over 700 toddler and animal rape videos walk with no jail time because he showed remorse. Paul Sloan sentenced Leanne Hodgson, 43, to 2.5 years for shouting racist abuse at a police officer. Sloan previously let a pedophile caught with 10,000 images of schoolgirls walk free because he hadn't looked at the images frequently enough. Neil Rafferty has denied bail to anyone who's arrested, has denied bail to even those arrested with viewing the riots remotely. That was something else that they were going after people for. It's not even people that participated for, but it's people that showed support online or even were viewing the footage that was taking place. They were prosecuting them. Rafferty previously let a man convicted of raping his vulnerable niece walk free because he was remorseful. Mark Burry sentenced Brandon Kirkwood, 20, to 2.5 years in prison for pushing a large wheel bin at police. Burry recently let a pedophile walk free with a recommendation to go get some fresh air instead of collecting child abuse image. Jeremy Richardson sentenced Kenzie Ruffley, 18, to 2 years in jail for kicking a CCTV van and goading police. Richard previously let a pedophile go after he targeted a vulnerable 13-year-old girl for sexual abuse because he would suffer comprehensively in prison. Robert Linford sentenced David McGuire, 45, to 2.5 years in jail for spitting on police officers. Linford previously let a pedophile go with a community sentence after he was caught with child sexual abuse images because he had constructive views of the future. Oh, and last one, because this is the one I was looking for. Stephen Everett sentenced Julie Sweeney, 53, to 15 months in prison for a Facebook post which reads, "Blow the Southport Mosque up." Everett has let multiple pedophiles walk free. He once called it unconscionable to send a man caught with child rape images to jail. So I'm not kidding when I say that you are viewed worse than pedophiles. I mean, there was one person that ended up getting arrested for waving the English flag. That was his only crime, was waving the English flag. Let's see. This person sentencing him to 26 months in custody. Sean Morris, the recorder of York, told Martin that he disgraced the flag he had been carrying, which belonged to everyone in this country. The judge said this calls for an immediate prison sentence. There has to be an element of deterrence so other young men age 18 in work and with no previous conviction realize the actions have consequences. But yeah, they went after this guy for waving the English flag. There was another report of an 11-year-old kid that ended up getting arrested. They're going to such ridiculous lengths to ruin the lives as much as possible of people who participated in this. And this is why many people were saying that when this kicked off, they said the English people have to keep going. You cannot simply go out there, do this, go home, and expect everything to be fine, because they were going to use all of the video footage that they had available in order to get as many arrests and convictions as possible. It's the same thing that they did after the January, January 6th in the United States. They used every single CCTV footage that they can get their hands on and every single facial recognition software that they could get to identify as many people as possible, and then that way they can convict them, thereby trying to deter people as much as possible from ever doing this again. But meanwhile, they're going to let the people that are responsible for the murder of 3 little girls, and those are just the most recent ones, doesn't even take into account all the other ones, all the other bodies that are lying at the feet of these judges, at the feet of these police, at the feet of these politicians. It doesn't even include them. But they're going to do everything they can to deter any sort of actions, while they do nothing to prevent the murder and the assault and the rapes that are taking place all across the UK right now. This is not an isolated incident. And that's why the idea of being white is original sin is because you are born. This is what they're taught in. This is what you're taught with all of these DEI programs and classes that they're running right now. Is that you? What did they say? Racism is power plus prejudice. Thereby saying, oh, well, nobody but white people can possibly be racist. So they can say whatever the hell they want. In fact, it's encouraged. It's encouraged that these people, these foreigners, say whatever the hell they want about us. But if you try and stand up for yourself, then you are going to be faced with all sorts of slurs and accusations for things that you played no part in. And it's because it is an effective club. It is an effective club to be used against us because it immediately puts people on the defensive. Because, of course, in this day and age, nobody wants to be considered a racist, and they will do everything they can to disprove it. But as soon as you start backtracking, and as soon as you start trying to say, oh, no, I'm not actually racist because X, Y, Z, then they are going to use that to go after you. Well, you say this, but now you gotta prove it. And this is how they always get people. When somebody comes out with a bit of a spicy opinion, some celebrity or someone who's got a little bit of money, whatever it happens to be, and says something a little bit spicy, and all these people, all these foreigners, all these little lefties and them, they jump on them because they smell blood in the water. The first thing that many of these people try and do is they try and backtrack that. Oh, no, well, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to be offensive. This is not actually who I am. But then they've got to, that's not enough. They got to keep proving it. So how do they end up proving it? Usually they make a donation to one of these groups that goes to benefit the very people that were just attacking them for having a spicy opinion, even if that opinion is true. Which is why you can't backtrack. This is one of those situations where as soon as this happens, you need to go on the offensive. You need to be going in guns blazing, going in head first. Because trying to play defense is the worst thing that you can do. And like they say, a good defense, the best defense is good offense. And the reason you got to go in is because you can't let them deter you. You can't let them go after you and try and put you on the back foot or try and throw these accusations at you, in which case is giving them the advantage. What you need to do is you need to double down. You need to go in unapologetically and basically say, come at me. One, there's going to be a group of people when you say something spicy that are going to rally to your defense, because whether those are people who agree in free speech, people who agree with what you say, people that just don't like the type of the groups that are coming after you, but they'll rally to your defense. But as soon as you start backtracking, then you find yourself alone, because they're willing to go to bat. They're willing to take on the fight with these people But as soon as you start backtracking and maybe even insulting these very people, they're not going to stand up for you, and you're going to find yourself alone. That's one reason. Another reason is because these foreigners, these lefties, and all these fucking people, they know that this is a weapon that they can use against you. They know this, and that is why they use it, because it's so effective. Again, this is what the idea of being a misogynist was 10 years ago. You know, no one wanted to be a misogynist, but things get played out and people stop caring, and that's how a weapon like that loses its strength. So you can't let it deter you. You can't let it throw you off and make you apologetic and trying to backtrack what you say. You have to double down, and if they call you any of this, you can't give a shit. In fact, it's best if you tell them, yeah, so what? So what? Let it roll off you like water off a duck's back. Who gives a shit what they think? Who cares if they think you're a racist? Because nothing you ever do will convince them otherwise. And they most certainly are not going to accept it if it means that they can hold this over your head. If it means that they can use this against you over and over. You have to take the power away from it. It's the only way that we can let go of this idea of it being an original sin. At the end of the day, it's an original sin, and it's an effective tool because we allow it to be an effective tool. If everybody that had an accusation like this thrown out, just threw it out, didn't care, sure, whatever. You think I'm a misogynist, you think I'm a racist, or you think I'm whatever that, I don't care. I really don't care. So what? Then it loses its ammunition. And this is why something like this, I don't give a shit about anymore. I don't care if someone wants to call me a racist because, so what? So what? None of these people are ever going to do anything that actually benefits me. They're never going to come to my defense. So why should I care about appeasing them? This is a common mistake that happens over and over and over again. And you see it a lot in politics, where you have a Republican, or in Canada, conservative, or even in the UK, they got the conservatives as well, all over, where they say something, these politicians say something, you have a bunch of lefties who aren't going to vote for them anyway and don't even like them that jump on them. And then you hear them come out and talk about, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I don't actually think this way. Why are you apologizing? You're apologizing to people that hate you, that are never going to vote for you, and all they want to do is try and bring you down, try and use that as a weapon, and you're allowing them to use it as a weapon. And it is an effective weapon that allows them to keep carrying out their agenda, keep mass importing people into this country because people are too afraid to say what the real issue is. People are too afraid in the UK to say, you know what, it's these fucking Arabs, it's these fucking Pakis, it's these people from North Africa that are causing all these problems right now, that are committing these attacks, that are making our society unsafer, and we should not be dealing with them. There's no reason for us to deal with them. But allows them to carry out their goals, their agendas, and this is the end result. Dublin, one of the safest cities in the world. Dublin is considered one of the safest cities in the world. An international survey rated it 18th, well ahead of many other European cities, back in 2003. Flash forward 21 years. Dublin ranks among the top 10 most dangerous major cities in Europe. 3 UK cities are higher. So what changed? What changed in the 21 years since Dublin was ranked the most safest city in, well, one of the safest cities in all of Europe? What changed was mass immigration. A bunch of people from the third fucking world that don't belong there, that brought their shit behaviors and shit cultures along with them. It wasn't the Irish. The Irish just didn't one day decide to start mugging and raping and assaulting and murdering each other. This is being carried out by foreign influences. And that's how you reach a point like that. And we have something similar that we're dealing with in Canada right now. There was an update a couple weeks ago from the York Regional Police about the things that they're dealing with over there. Let's take a look at it.
While York Region remains very safe, we are experiencing an increase in crimes involving firearms. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with some of the data so you understand what's taking place within the region and the root cause of gun violence. In 2024, the region has seen a 92% increase in shootings, a total of 46 since January of this year. And we've also seen a 106% increase in carjackings, a total of 64 since January of this year. And equally troubling, since 2019, over a 5-year period, we've seen a 400% increase in carjackings, which are violent and traumatizing for victims and their families. Illegal handguns have become all too easy to access with limited consequences for criminals. And almost all of the guns being used in these crimes are illegal handguns, many of which are being smuggled across the border from the U.S. This surge in gun violence can be attributed to organized crime rings who are obtaining and using illegal handguns to commit a number of offenses. Organized crime is also behind both the nationwide increases in auto thefts that we've all witnessed and the ongoing conflict in the tow truck industry.
Yeah, so that's what's going on down in the GTA. And again, what has changed so that way that this area of Southern Ontario has become so dangerous to such a massive degree? I mean, he says like, "Oh well, it's still safe. You know, we're still safe," and yet you just listed off about these terrible percentages from this year to last year. What has changed? Toronto and the GTA has been the center of a lot of this mass immigration where a lot of these people are being put. Brampton is no longer a Canadian city. It is an Indian city. This is what has changed. These are the people who are bringing about these problems. It is coming from the Middle East. It is coming from third worlds. It is coming from North Africans. Over and over and over again, we see this. You see this in the States. You see this in the southern states. They've had so many people that are just running across the border. They've got MS-13. They've got the cartel that they have to deal with now. There was a story just within the last week about Venezuelans. Was it Venezuelans or El Salvadorians? I think it was Venezuelans that are taking over apartment complex with violence, with weapons. You know, Springfield, Ohio had a bunch of Haitians that were just dropped in it, and they're eating the fucking pets. People that used to be able to let their cats go outside and run around, their cats are going missing, and they're finding them strung up in the backyard of these Haitians and that have been skinned and being prepared for food. They're eating the fucking seagulls. This is what's happening all across the white world, all across the European world, all across the North American world. The more and more immigration that comes in, the more and more problems that they are bringing with them. The fact of the matter is, and I think we probably all can say this because it's damn near impossible not to interact with somebody that is an immigrant in this country now. For how many that there are, they're going to be your neighbors. You're going to see them at work probably. They're going to be people that work at the stores that you go when you run your errands. That I think probably most people have this same experience, which is you probably have met some people that are immigrants, that are foreigners, that are great people. maybe some of the best people in the world you've ever met, possibly. It's a very real thing. But anecdotal stories do not trump pattern recognition. Because even if these individuals are amazing, many more from the countries that they come from are not. Many more of them are problems and that are causing these problems across our countries. And it's not something that we should be dealing with. It is absolutely no reason that we should be forced to downgrade our societies in order to appease these people. Rockdale grooming gang. The girl kept in a cage and made to act like a dog. A 15-year-old raped and killed with heroin injections from an abuser, and an aborted fetus kept in a freezer by police. This is what they're bringing with them. But of course, according to Maya Goodfellow, we keep hearing about the legitimate concerns over immigration. The truth is, there are none. Trying to gaslight you into thinking that the world has always been this way. Now, the world was not always perfect. It wasn't perfect when any of us were children. And even people who are older, it was not perfect when you were 20, 30, 40. It's never been perfect. But it's never been this bad either. Things keep getting worse, but they want you to deny your eyes and your ears. What's that line from 1984? The last edict of the party was that you deny your eyes and ears. This is exactly what they're doing. And now, not only have they divided us, not only have they destroyed any semblance of us uniting as a people and doing what's best for us. Not only have they flooded our country with these people, but now they're replacing you at your jobs, making it significantly more difficult for you to find new jobs. This is something that the younger generation are dealing with right now. Kids that are just getting out of high school are having a bitch of a time trying to find work because it's all being taken over either by the immigrants who come here or temporary foreign workers in doing jobs that should be for high school students. Tim Hortons doesn't really hire high school students. My first job was at a Tim Hortons when I was 15 years old. They're not really doing that much anymore. They're hiring all Indians. Indians and Arabs. That's what's working at Tim Hortons right now. And then this is something that ended up popping up the other day. Some stunning great replacement facts. Since July 2018, native-born Americans have lost 350,000 jobs. That means zero job creation for native-born workers in the past 6 years. They have been replaced with 4.7 million non-native workers over this period. And the numbers are probably just as bad here in Canada. But this one was in the US. So many people have come in and taken over jobs that technically the native U.S. population is out 4.7 million jobs over the last 6 years. Even if they have been creating them, they have been creating them not for us, but creating them for all the immigrants that are coming in. And in Canada, we're subsidizing the wage of our temporary foreign workers. The government announced a couple months back that they were going to subsidize wages. It was going to be 50% of their salary up to $10,000. And in some areas, I think it was even more than that. I think it was 70% of their salary up to $10,000 or maybe a little bit more. But if you break that down, if that's a minimum wage job, that's a third of the salary. If that is a $100,000 job a year, that is 10% of the salary. Now, what chances do you have of getting that job when this other person can come in and a third up to from 10% all the way up to a third of their salary can be subsidized by the government, that the employer doesn't have to pay. But with you, they do. They're going to take the temporary foreign worker. And even though they announced that, oh, well, because of a lot of the people that are getting angry with the temporary foreign workers, the Liberals ended up announcing that, oh, well, we're actually going to scale it back and we're going to kick some of these people out of the country. This is just a temporary measure that they're doing to try and appease people. It isn't going to last. As soon as people forget about this and kind of calm down a little bit, they're going to be ramping it up all over again. So you are a second-class citizen in your own home. But they want to gaslight you into thinking that you have all this power and all this privilege that all these other people don't have. Meanwhile, they are actively paying for your replacement. That doesn't sound very privileged, does it? Your kids can't go to school without being put in danger of having these gangs of foreigners that might attack them in the hallways, which is happening all the time. There are videos coming out from high schools all the time of kids being attacked by gangs of black and brown kids and Arab kids. But this is supposed to be some sort of privilege? And this is why racism is original sin. And racism really only applies to us. Thereby by the metric of being born, making us sinful. Just something that was on my mind that I kind of wanted to get off my chest. Plus, I hadn't uploaded anything in a while, so I wanted to rant a little bit about everything that is just going on right now. But that's all I have for you all today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion.